ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येम अक्षभिः यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैर्तुष्टुवांसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति नः इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नः तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्ददातु ॐ शान्तिः 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 यो अन्तः प्रविश्य मम वाच इमां प्रसुप्तां सञ्जीवयति अखिलशक्तिदधस्वदाम्ना अन्यांष्टहस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान्नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यं लसतु श्रीमदानन्दतीर्थेन्दुर्नो हृदम्बरे यद्वचश्चन्द्रिका स्वान्तसन्तापं विनिकृन्तति पदवाक्यप्रमाणज्ञान् प्रणम्य शिरसा गुरून् व्याकरिष्ये यथाभूतं विष्णुतत्त्वविनिर्णयम्. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to folks who have joined for the 21st session of Mundaka Upanishad, also known as Atharvana Upanishad. So the rishis, let us pay our obeisance to the rishis who have given us this amazing Upanishad to us for contemplation. Atharva, Angira, Satyavaha, Angirasa, Shuanaka, and all the acharyas who have given us the bhashyas. The Chandas is Anushtup, and the Devata for this Upanishad, as you all know, is Aksharanamaka Paramatma, and we are currently doing Dvitiya Mundake Prathama Kandaha Tade Tat Satyam. Yata Sudiptat Pavakat Vishvulingaha Sahasrashaha Prabhavante Sarupaha Tata Aksharat Vividaha Somya Bhavaha Prajayante Tatra Chaiva Apiyanti Divyohi Amurtaha Purushaha Sabhahyabhya Antarohya Ajaha Apranohya Manaha Shubrohi Aksharat Parataha Paraha Yetasma Jayate Prano Manaha Sarva Indriyani Cha Kham Vayur Jyoti Rapaha Prithvi Vishwasya Dharini Agnir Murda Chakshushi Chandra Surya Yoho Dishaha Prane Dishaha Shrotre Vag Vibhrutashta Vedaha Vayuhu Prane Hrudayam Vishwamasya Padbyam Prithvihi Esha Sarva Bhutantaratma Tasmad Agnihi Samido Yascha Yasya Suryaha Somat Parjanyaha Voshadayaha Prithivyam Puman Retas Sinchati Yoshitayam Bhakvi Prajaha Purushat Samprasutaha. So we are currently stationed in the fifth mantra. And as we discussed last week, this fifth mantra is quite an incredible mantra. And it is fifth mantra because it talks about the five Agnis. It talks about the Panchagni Vidyas. Yeah. Tasmat Agnihi Samido Yasya Suryaha Somat Parjaneha Voshadayaha Prithivyam Puman Retahas Sinchati Yoshitayam Bhakvi Prajaha Purushat Samprasuta. So we saw this in all its glory, right? So this is just a summary slide so that we can get our orientations again for today's Chintana. So the first interpretation of this particular mantra, the fifth mantra of this Mundaka, is the Panchagni Vidya. We understood that the Panchagni Vidya, the whole scale discussion of Panchagni Vidya basically involves a lesson by Pravahana Jaivili, a king, to Uddalaka Aruni. Yeah, and this is intuited and documented in Chandogya Upanishad 5th Adhyaya and Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 6th Adhyaya. Verse by verse, it is the same. Both the Chandogya and Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, they talk the same Panchagni Vidya with the same, situation of the Prakarana. And what our Angirasa has done in this particular mantra is he's given us a glimpse. He's given us a very, very brief overview of this. And how do we infer that of all the various things that are discussed here? What is discussed here? Swarga, Parjanya, Oshadi, and Prithvi, the male body and the female body. The reason why this is discussed is this is the journey of souls. What is the creation of souls? Souls are uncreated, right? So there is no controversy there at all. Souls are uncreated. Souls exist and they are uncreated. Period. But if they are uncreated, what does that creation of souls actually mean? So the creation of souls actually means acquisition of a gross body. So once the 24 tattvas have come into place, which was discussed in the previous verse, once the Brahmanda is in position, then the evolution of living species comes in, then the Pindandas come into place, and then the Jivas are having this Pindanda. And now Angirasa is talking about what is that journey of souls, and we understood Tasmad Agnihi Samido Yasya Suryaha. So we understood the various fives, isn't it? So let me go through this revision. So this is a Pancha Agni Vidya. And Angirasa, before we understand this verse and the Panchagni Vidya of Chandogya Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, we have to remind ourselves the importance of the number 5. So any Agni Kunda has got 5 components. What are the 5 components? Archihi or the flame, Samit or the fuel, Vishvulinga or the sparks that come out of the Agni, Dhuma or the smokes that come out of the Agni, and the coal, also called Angaraha. So Archihi, Samit, Vishvulingaha, Angaraha, and Dhuma are the 5 components of any Agni Kunda. Okay, so that is how Angirasa and the rishis have intuited the contemplation of the Panchagni Vidya and also the 5 forms of the Lord. The 4 Vyuha forms with the Mula Rupa, Narayana, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, Sankarsana, and Vasudeva, again 5. So this 5, they are pretty much the same with regards to the interpretation or the meaning of these verses. So the 5 components of a fire we understood last week. Then we also understood that Ahuti is what is the given into the fire or the oblation into the fire is the Ahuti. And classically, when we do Havan, we give butter, we give ghee, butter, milk, grains, food. So all those sort of things is given as Ahuti into the fire. Okay. So the view there is as the soul's journey through the universe. Once a creation has come about, the soul's journey in various planes of existence in the universe. So how does that happen? Jivas are entirely dependent, hopeless sentient beings. So their onward journey is helped by them by the Tattva Abhimani Devatas and of course the Paramatma himself. So these Devatas give these Jivas as Ahuti in 5 fires. Okay? So that is the Panchagni Vidya. And of course, Agni primarily also means Agni Narayana. So we got to have these basics in our mind. Without having these basics, we just can't understand this verse. So now that we understood the basics last week, what did we understand from the journey of souls? So there are 5 fires in which the Jivas are given as Ahuti. Those 5 fires are Swarga, Tasmad Agnihi Samido Yasya Suryaha. So in Swarga, the fuel, that is the Samit, is the sun or the Suryaha. In Chandogya and Brihadaranyaka, it is called Aditya. So Surya and Aditya are the same. So Tasmad Agnihi Samido Yasya Suryaha. Then from Swarga, what happens for those of us who are circling around samsara, we only do the Pitruyana route. We are not doing the Devayana route because we are doing all sorts of nasty karma. So we're going round and round in circles. And that is what Angirasa is describing. So the highest station of planetary system that we can go is the Chandraloka. And from the Chandraloka, we take a U-turn. Okay, once we have exhausted our karmas in Chandraloka, we take the U-turn and then start descending again. So the Rishi says, we come to the Parjanya. Somat Parjanya. So from the Somaloka or Chandraloka, we are coming to the Parjanya Loka. So Parjanya Loka is the Agni, where Jiva is given as a Ahuti, and the Jiva falls down on earth in rain droplets. And he falls down on Prithvi, where the Oshadi is or the plants are, and he gets into all the food and grains. So that is the 3rd Ahuti. Now, what are we doing? We are cooking this food and we are eating this food. We are putting that food into our mouth. So that is the 4th Ahuti of the Jivas. The Jivas are in all the food grains and all the foods that we eat, says the Vedas. So it goes into the male body, and from inside the male body, it enters into the testicles, it enters into the semen, and it goes into the sperm. That is the 4th Agni. That is in the male body. And then during fertilization, the sperm goes into the egg of the Yosha or the female body. And there it spends 9 months. So that female body is the fifth ahuti for the jiva. After 9 months, a baby is born. And it grows and it conducts its transactions in life, various karmas, acquires all sorts of karmic imprints. This jiva with this gross body, also called sadhana sharira, hangs out in this prithvi for about 80 years, 90 years, 50 years, 40 years, whatever our score should be. And then one fine day, that body is again given into the same Agni. And then what happens? The jiva ascends again and comes back again. So this is the cycle of the jiva. The Panchagni Vidya essentially should give us a contemplation of what is the journey of souls. It is actually a sad state for the jivas, and we don't realize it, but that is what it is. It is suffering at every stage, yeah, when it goes through this cycle. So when we understand this Panchagni Vidya, we should think about the suffering. Jayatirtha, what did he say? Ihahi vivida samsarika dukkha darshanena. So we have to see the suffering in samsara. If we don't even think about suffering in samsara and we think everything is hunky-dory and fine, then there is no point. But he who actually sees suffering in samsara, ihahi vivida samsarika dukkha darshanena viraktasya. So he has to get that vairagya. Yeah, that is the first step towards our spiritual progress. When we get that vairagya, when we look at this Panchagni and the movement of souls, we get that vairagya. Yeah. And then we become a mumukshu, and then we start making our journey and we start learning about scriptures, what is going on in this life, why am I suffering, and etc. Then we realize why we are cycling through this and who is it that is controlling and making it happen. In the previous verse, Angirasa said, Sarva Bhuta Antara Atma. So there is this Paramatma who is all pervaded everywhere in all of the material existence and also inside the jivas, who is actually making all this happen. At that point, we realize we are nothing. We are such a dependent being on this Antaryamin who is inside us. So that philosophy, that acceptance that we are dependent beings and we are guided by this Paramatma should lead to, that knowledge should lead us to devotion to this Paramatma, because it is he who can finally liberate us. So Jnana, Bhakti and Vairagya, those are the three prerequisites for liberation. So when we think about Panchagni Vidya and when we understand the various layers of depths of philosophy in it, then we can understand what is it that we need to do. Okay, so that is why Panchagni Vidya is very, very important. So as I've said many times, please go and check it out in Chandogya Upanishad and Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, because the conclusion in both these Upanishads is, he who understands the Panchagni Vidya in its fullest sense, in the deepest philosophical sense, actually achieves moksha. He actually achieves liberation. Because ultimately it is Paramatma who can give liberation. And when we understand these 5 forms of Paramatma and the 5 times 5 contemplation, that is 5 times 5 equals 25, and the Mula 5 forms, that is together 30 rupas of Paramatma that we contemplate, then there is scope for our liberation. So that is the Panchagni Vidya in the first sense, which I think is very important, as we have discussed just now. Then there is, of course, the second interpretation of the Panchagni Vidya. What was that second interpretation? This Paramatma has created everything for us. Yeah, he creates Agni. Why? When we create Agni, we cook food and we eat and we can have a good time. That's what we are doing all the time. So we are eating food. So he creates Agni because that is what is sustains our bodies, because we cook food and eat it. This Paramatma has created the fuel for the fire. The summits have also been created by Paramatma. The summits come from the trees or the woods. For allowing that asma, the Rishi says he has created the sun and he has created the moon, because these two guys are essential for the rain. And the rain is essential for food. Because without rain, there are no plants. No plants means no food. So he also creates the food. And then what happens? Man eats it. The jivas get into it. The sperms go into the egg. Fertilization happens. And then we are born. Then once we are born, when we are growing, what are we doing? We are eating. This is the cycle. Okay. So that is the second interpretation of Panchagni Vidya, which we again touched upon last week. Okay. Here is the new interpretation or new way of looking at Panchagni Vidya or this particular verse. Tasmad Agnihi Samido Yasya Suryaha Somat Parjanyaha Yoshadayaha Prithivyaam Puman Retas Sinchati Yoshitayam Bahvi Prajaha Purushat Samprasutaha. Okay. Look at the four names that come here. Agni, Surya, Soma, Parjanya. So those are the four names that are coming here. Agni, Surya, Soma, and Parjanya. Okay. This is not some coincidence that our rishis decided that they are going to put these four names of four Tattvabhimani Devatas here. No, there is a reason for it. There is a reason why these four. He could have put anybody, right? He could have put Varuna. He could have put Parvati. He could have put any other Devatas. But Angirasa has intuited the names of these four Devatas, Tattvabhimana Devatas. Who are those guys? Agni, Surya, Soma, and Parjanya. The reason being that actually opens up a very important philosophy. So what has happened so far? We have actually come out of our mother's womb, yeah, and we are in this samsara. Right? So in the Vedic times, yajna was a very important component of anybody. Yeah, after you become a grihastha, you're supposed to do yajna. You're supposed to do agnihotra and upasana yajna and so on and so forth. We don't do any of those. Let alone if we should consider ourselves as lucky of actually lighting a lamp in our puja room. That lighting the lamp is our yajna, is our agni kunda. So this actually opens up what is called as a Adi Yajna Srishti. Yeah. So the contemplation of this whole Paramatma and all the Devatas in a Yajna. Okay. So when you do Havan, and again, we come back to it again and again. So next time when you do a Havan, remember this verse. Four Devatas, Agni, Surya, Soma, and Parjanya. Watch the Purohita who is doing a Havan. Whether he is actually bringing or calling forth these devatas in the homa or not, watch that out. You can be an examiner on this. Do that. The reason being, in any sacrifice, so this is the view, we do yajna not only in Pitruloka or Mrutyuloka. Yajnas are happening according to Vedas everywhere in the universe, including in Swargalokas, where all the Devatas are also doing yajnas. Yajna of what? Yajna of the Paramatma or worshipping of the Paramatma. Everybody. After all, souls are everywhere in the universe, right? Some are lower, some are higher. The exalted, highly evolved beings can be in some other planetary systems. Those beings are also doing yajna. Yajna means what? Worshipping of the Paramatma. That is the view of the rishis of the Vedas. So, in the Swargaloka, what are all the planetary existence? Agni Loka, Surya Loka, Soma Loka, Parjanya Loka. Here we have said this Parjanya Loka is the clouds, okay? But actually there is a Devata called Parjanya, who is the Abhimani of the cloud, of that portion. But he has got his own loka, says the Vedas, Parjanya Loka. Okay? So the Agni Devata, Surya Devata, Soma Devata, and Parjanya Devata become very important when there is a cosmic sacrifice or a yajna happening in the Swarga, for example. Okay. So why is that important? Let's look at the Mrityu Loka. So in the Mrityu Loka, when we are doing Havan, there are four priests. Nowadays, you will be lucky to have one priest, and that too, that priest actually properly doing a Havan itself is a big deal. But the proper Vedic Yajna will have four priests. Okay? These are called Ritviks, head priest. These are called Ritviks or priests. Who are those? Hotra, Advaryu, Udgatra, Brahman. Okay, so you may want to memorize these words because these are important. These are priests. So if you think about, YouTube it and see how a proper Vedic yajna is done, it's incredible. You have the Hotru priest who recites the Rig Veda. The Advaryo priest recites the Yajur Veda. The Udgatru priest recites the Samaveda. And then there is the Brahman Ritvik, who is the supervisor. This chap just needs to supervise and ensure that the Hotru, Advaryo, and Udgatru are doing their jobs properly. If they don't recite properly, for example, he will intervene and say, you're not doing this properly, please rectify, etc. So these four priests are essential to perform the yajna properly. Hotru, Advaryu, Udgatru, Brahman. Now, each of these head priests will have three assistants, Ardi, Tri, and Padi. And so in the Hotru, there are four. Advaryu, there are four. Udgatru, there are four. Brahman, there are four. Overseeing this yajna, be it in Mrityuloka or in Swargaloka. Okay? So how much did it come through? 16 priests. And we all know the significance of 16 priests, and we'll come to that in a minute. Okay. So 16 priests are essential to do a proper yajna. And then, of course, there is the Yajamana and the Yajamani, who are the number 17 and number 18. And this group is very familiar with this 18. Okay. So this is the inner philosophy of this Adi Yajna Srishti, yeah, of this particular mantra. So Agni is the Abhimani. So for the Hotru priest, Agni is the Abhimani Devata in Mrityuloka. For the Advaryu priest, Surya is the Abhimani Devata. For the Udgatra priest who recites the Sama is the Abhimani Devata. And for Brahman, it is Parjanya. Okay? That is why these guys are there. And if you go to the Rig Veda and Brahmanas and so on, you will find that these same guys, Agni, Surya, Soma, and Parjanya, are also the Hotrus in Swargaloka. Agni is the Hotru in Swargaloka, and he is the Abhimani of the Rig Veda. Surya is the Advaryu in the Swargaloka, and he is the Abhimani of the Yajur Veda. Okay. Udgatra, Soma is the Udgatra in the Swargaloka, and he is also Abhimani of the Samaveda. Okay. Parjanya is the supervisor of all the yajnas that happens in the higher planetary system, and he is also the Abhimani of the supervisor priest who ensures that the yajnas are done properly. Okay. So that is the inner, in Guhya Bhasha, if you like, or the secret philosophies of the Rig Veda, where it brings out. So when we think about Agni, Surya, Soma, and Parjanya, it is not a random name. They are there because they are key folks involved in yajna. Okay. Yajna is what the humans are supposed to do. Yajna, of course, has various meanings that we'll come to it in a minute. But the ones that we have sadhana sharira, we are supposed to do yajnas. Yeah. And these are all the four guys who are critical for this. Now, let us kind of go a little bit higher in this. So, what does this Agni or the Hotra, what does he do? He recites the Rig Veda. Okay. Rig Veda is Riks. Archyate iti Rik. Okay. They are just praise. They are mantras in praise of the Supreme. They are Padya. They are in the Padya form. And also remember, the Rig Veda Riks are also called Shastra. They're called Shastra mantras. So when you read the Vedas, it will say Shastra. Yeah, they are the Shastra mantras. They're also called Shastras or Riks. Yajur Veda is the prose or the Gadya. Then, of course, Udgatra, the Samaveda is Ghana. Okay? So there are only three forms of human communication. There is nothing outside this. Verbal communication. There are only three forms of verbal communication. That is Padya, Gadya, and Ghana. Yeah. So these guys are doing Rik, Yajus, and Samaveda recitation. And our Brahman priest is just overseeing all this. Brahman priest has to be really very learned because he needs to be an expert in all the three to ensure that everything is happening properly. Then you have this word Samit, isn't it? Samido yasya suryaha. Samit is all the woods. And if you go to the Vedic philosophy and the Vedic sacrifices as described in Yajur Veda, there are something called Prayaja Yagas. Prayaja Yajnas are done with 5 ahutis. So Samit there represents the Vasanta, Grishma, Varsha, Sharad, Hemanta, Shirsha, Ritus. There are only 5 Ritus. Okay. And the Abhimanis of those 5 Ritus are worshipped in the Prayaja Yagas that are done in Vedic rituals. Okay. So for those of us who are interested in understanding these rituals, they are not mechanical things, throwing stuff into the fire. There is a whole lot of science and philosophy into it. Yeah, for those of us interested, we can go into this. And of course, that is what is the Adhiyagnya Srishti. So this mantra again tells you about these 4 devatas who are important for Rig, Yajus, and Samaveda, and for the recitation of this. The 16, okay, so I'm going to break for a minute. The number 16, which Upanishad discusses the 16, the 15 fences and so on. Who want to tell us about that?
Shat Prashna Upanishad.
Shat Prashna, beautiful. Sushilji, thank you very much. And then, of course, the 17 and 18 is there. See, in Earth, it is what? It's the wife and the husband. They together form 18. Okay, so let's open this up a little bit more. So let's go a little deeper into this layer. Okay. So what is happening in the Swargaloka or at the dawn of creation? Purusha Shukta talks about Yagnena Yagnam Ayajanta Devaha Tani Dharmani Pratamanyas, and never forget that verse. Why? Because the Devatas are doing their yajnas during creation. Their yajna is to bring forth the various components of creation in place. So all these Devatas are there, right? Agni, Surya, Soman, Parjanya. 16, their assistants, 16 in number. Then you have number 17, Yajamani, number 18, Yajamana, that we spoke about. Okay, that is in the a sacrifice that is done on earth. But at the dawn of creation, this is what happened. Okay, so that Yajamani and Yajamana is what is described in the next line here. Puman Retas Sinchati Yoshitayam. Okay. Puman. Puman is who? Puman. Bhuma. Puman. Who is Purna? He who is complete. He is called Puman. Yoshit means the female principle. Yoshita means the highest female principle. Yoshita. So what is this Puman, number 18, did in creation? Retas Sinchati. He gave this material Mula Prakriti and Jivas to Chetana Prakriti or Yoshita. So that is a deep philosophy there that we need to think about. And I put a very interesting Gita verse here, chapter 14, 3 and 4. So who wants to take this up? Chapter 14, 3 and 4. Who wants to recite it, please?
Yeah, if no one is, I can.
Yeah, go for it, Neetaji. Yeah.
Mama yonirmahad brahma tasmin garbham dadhamyaham sambhavas sarva bhutanam tato bhavati bharata sarva yonishu kaunteya murtayas sambhavanti yaha tastasam brahma Mahadyonihi aham bija pradapita.
So these 2 words in Gita are pretty important when we deal with the Adhiyagnya Srishti and also when we look at this particular mantra. Okay, so look at those words, very, very clear. Mama Yonir. Okay, Krishna is saying, Mama, mine, Yonir. Yoni there means Bharya. Bharya means my wife. Okay. Mama Yonir. Right? There are various translations that I have seen. I will just keep my mouth keep quiet because I don't think that has gone into the deeper philosophies of this verse and linking it up with Mundaka Upanishad and actually understanding how the Srishti Prakarana is. Okay. Mama Yonir. Krishna is very clear. So my wife, my consort. What is her name? Mahad Brahma. Her name is Mahad Brahma. My wife is Mahad Brahma. What did I do to this Mahad Brahma? So this Yoshita is Mahad Brahma. What did I do? Tasmin Garbham Dadami Aham. I made her pregnant. I gave my things to her. Okay. So what happened? What did he give? Brahma Mahat. this Mahat Brahma, Brahma Mahat Yonir, Aham, I, Bija Pradaha. I gave the seeds. As a father, I gave the seeds to this Mahat Brahma. Okay. So I think it's a very deep verse. It's a deep philosophical verse, which, as usual, unfortunately, taken into various interpretations. Let me make an attempt to give you a perspective of what is it that Krishna is talking about, or rather Veda Vyasa is talking about in these two verses. After all, Gita is the essence of the Upanishads, right? So Yoni means what? Bharya, Utpatti, Sthanam, and Karanam. Those are the three verses. But in the Prakarana, we take this as the Bharya. So then the question comes is, what is that very, very puzzling word called Mahat Brahma? Who is this Mahat Brahma? Okay, so again, we need to understand what are the etymologies of Brahma. Brahma has got various etymologies. Okay, Mahat Brahma, who is Mahat Brahma? So here is a view that I'm giving you here. So you have Brahma, Parabrahma, Mahat Brahma, Paramam Mahat Brahma. These are all the words you will see in the Upanishads and the Vedas. Okay, Brahma, Parabrahma, Mahat Brahma, Parama Brahma. Then, of course, there is another Brahma that we read. And then there is, of course, our Chaturmukha Brahma. So there are so many Brahmas that are described in the Vedas. So again, that Prakarana or the contextual relevance becomes extremely important. So here is a quick quiz. What is the Brahma that we read? What is that Brahma called? Vedas.
Here, is it Chaturmukha Brahma?
So that is Chaturmukha Brahma here. So Brahma means Vedas are also called Brahma. Yeah. So what is Brahma essentially means? Who is going to tell us what is Brahma actually means? Anyone wants to share their ideas? What is Brahma generally?
That which is big. Brihat iti Brahma is something which is big is called Brahma. One definition.
Yeah, Prakashji, thank you very much. That which is big. Okay. So Jivas are called Brahma, not because we are Brahman. We are bigger than Jadas. Okay. So Jivas are called in one sense Brahma. Parabrahma, Mukti Jivas. Mukti Jivas are bigger than Jivas in Samsara. So they are called Parabrahma. Then higher among, bigger than the Jivas, in the Mukti Sthana, who is there? Mahat Brahma. She is always in liberation. Shri Tattva is always liberated. She is the highest. Okay. So she is called Mahat Brahma. Then, of course, there is this guy who is highest among the highest. Paramam Mahat Brahma. Okay. Vishnu is called Paramam Mahat Brahma. Jivas may be called Brahma. Okay. Brahma means that which is big or that which has attained its fullness. Yeah, that is Brahma. So look at the Mundaka Upanishad itself. We will come with this verse a little bit later. Sa yo havai tat paramam brahma veda brahmaiva bhavati. Na asya brahmavid kule bhavati. Tarati shokam, tarati papmanam. So that's a beautiful verse. Acharyas have looked at this verse in very great depths. Okay, so our Acharya settles this very beautifully. Some folks think this verse tells Jiva Brahma Aikya. 100% not. Read the verse carefully. That is, sometimes folks slip. Look at the words. Sayo havai tat paramam Brahma Veda. He who knows paramam Brahma. Paramam Mahat Brahma. He who knows paramam Brahma, what happens to him? Brahmaiva bhavati. He does not become paramam Brahma bhavati. Look at those words. Grammars are very important in interpretation of the Vedas. This is where some folks have sadly fallen. Sayohavai tat paramam Brahma Veda Brahmaiva bhavati. He who knows Paramatma reaches his fullness. Na asya Brahmavid kuleba. So it's probably a little bit out of context. But what I was trying to tell you here is that the Gita verse 14, 3 and 4, they actually talk about Puman and Yoshitayam that is discussed in this particular verse. So what do these guys do? When Brahma Mahat Yonir Aham Bija Pradaha Pitaha, in the creation, when the Jivas come into existence, when this Puman gives it to the Yoshitayam, then what happens? Bahvi Prajaha Purushat Samprasutaha. All the Jivas come about. Again, how? from this Purushat, some Prasutaha. So we saw this word very beautifully last week. So we had two folks raise their hands, Harish and then Manjunath Paiji. Harish.
Yeah. This was for the Yoni point. So the term Hiranyagarbha or Mahati Atman, is it different words for the same concept, or is that different?
So Hiranyagarbha is Chaturmukha, right? Classically, that is Hiranyagarbha. Yeah, he is Hiranyagarbha.
That is
Chaturmukha.
okay. Not to be confused with Mahat Brahma. Okay, got it. Okay.
Yeah. Sheila,
Okay.
yeah, thanks, Harish. Manjunath ji, Sheila ji, you had
Madhu, it's Jiva Brahmaikya, you said. If it is not this, I mean, I don't know anything about it, but if it's not this, is it, how can it be felt? Is it in Asamprajnata Samadhi only?
So I don't know. From my perspective, there is nothing called Jiva Brahma Aikya, Shilaji. I think it's not something that is supported in the Vedas. So I really can't comment on that. So we are different, and Brahman is different. And in Asamprajnata Samadhi, we have a relationship with the Paramatma, and we have an aproksha jnana of him. And in that jnana, we are also experiencing our own bliss. Is how I've understood that.
So the ego will be kept there, isn't it then?
So in Asamprajnata, of course, the mind is still, and the jiva itself is actually intuiting its own with its own knowledge and seeing its own nature and the Paramatma. Yeah. Okay. So we move on. Yeah. So you move on. So this is what this one is, isn't it? So that very beautifully takes us to the next verse. So we have now seen why Agni, Surya, Soma, Parjanya, they are there in that verse. And now we have seen how that Puman and Yoshitayam, how they bring about the creation. Then we have linked it up with chapter 14, verse 3 and 4, when he says, Taspin Garbam Dadami Aham. So that Puman offers the jivas who are there inside him to the Chetana Prakriti to go and start the creation, and all the jivas come about. So the Samanvaya there is very beautiful. And Purusha Shukta, of course, also Yajnena Yajnam Ayajanta Devaha Tani Dharmani Pratamanyasan Tehanakam Mahimanaha Sachante Yatra Purve Sadhyaha Santi Devaha. So this yajna then becomes very important, because so now we are slow. Angirasa is taking us in a particular direction here, which is very, very interesting. So we are born, now we are in the Mrityu Loka, we got a sadhana sharira, we are doing yajna. And he has also told us what is that cosmic yajna and what the devatas are doing, all those yajnas, and he has told us about those four important guys who own the three Vedas and the supervisor. Then we need to, before we move to the next verse, let's do a brief recap of what is this yajna all about. Is it just throwing stuff into the fire? That is yajna? No, there are so many interpretations of this, and we have done this before, but I just go through this again so that we get our perspective right here. Yeah, so what is yajna? Incarnation of Vishnu. So which Upanishad did we do last time which spoke about an incarnation of Vishnu? So who is going to tell us that? Ishavasya Upanishad, very good. And who is the person who is worshipping Ishavasya, who is worshipping Yajnanamaka Paramatma there?
Swayambhu Manu.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Sushilji. 100%. So incarnation of Vishnu is Swayambhu Manu worshipping Yajnanamaka Paramatma. Yeah, who is his grandson in that equation. So that is Ishavasya Upanishad. Yajno vai Vishnu Taittiriya Aranyaka. In Vishnu Sahasranama, 48th name of Vishnu is Yajna. Aham hi sarva yajnanam bhoktecha prabhurevacha. Yajna is also the cosmic creation that we have just seen. Yajna is an act of surrender to God. Okay, then, of course, the way we understand it, sacrifice in which a deity is propitiated by chanting of prayers and mantras and the offering of ghee into the sacred fire. I picked this sentence from Google. Yajna can mean worship, prayer, praise, offering, oblation, sacrifice. Okay. So it's an act. It could be, yajnam could be an object of an act. It can be an instrument of action, or it can be the act itself. Okay. Yajna comes from the root word yaj. Yaja. Yaja what? Deva Pujana. Worship of the deities. Yaja. Sangati Karane. Our satsang is a yajna. Yaja. Dane. Charity is a yajna. So these are all the various meanings of yajna that we need to then bring into our bring it out from our memory, because we've done all this before several months, years ago about this yajna. They all become important with regards to what is going to come up next in the subsequent verses. So I hope this summary slide of yajna is helpful. And of course, previously we have done yajna and the wheel of life, right? So who is going to recite us chapter 3, 14 and 16 verse, please? Who wants to go first?
I can try.
Yeah, go for it.
Annad bhavanti bhutani parjanyadanna sambhavaha yagnad bhavati parjanyaha yajñah karma samudbhavaha karma brahmodbhavam vidhi brahmakshara samudbhavam tasmat sarvagatam brahma nityam yajñe pratishtitam. One more. Evam pravartitam chakram nanuvartayati yayaha aghayurindriya ramaha mogham partha sajivati.
Beautiful, Harishji. Thank you so much. So this yajna, the wheel of life, also we have done in Mundaka Upanishad. So when you look at the sequence that Krishna has instructed or taught to Arjuna, it's another beautiful mantra, beautiful verse of Gita, which is very relevant here, because it then takes us to the next topic or the concept that Angirasa is going to talk about. So what happens at Jivas, we, man and woman, we eat food, right? And it is through food we make man's, retas, and all those things we have just understood. So food, man eats. Food comes from where? Rain. Rain is from what? Sun and the clouds make the rain. Okay. And how do the rains happen? If we do yajna properly. What does a yajna mean? Environmentally conscious work as a dedication. Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to have climate change and all the things that we're seeing, drought, etc. Yeah. Environmentally conscious work as a dedication to Paramatma. Why? Because Ishavasyam Idang Sarvam. Nothing belongs to me. Everything belongs to Paramatma. If you do in that spirit, nobody will be abusing the environment. And if we don't abuse the environment, everything is going to happen properly. Okay. So the rain happens. Now, how does this yajna happens? It is actions. We do, yajna is an action, right? We are doing stuff. Worship is an action. We are doing action. But our action, we are dependent actors. Swatantro Bhagavan Vishnu. Vishnu is a Swatantra. And he is a Sarvagatam Brahma. He is everywhere and he is an independent actor who makes all the jivas act. So it is Brahman that actually makes everything act. How can we know the Brahman? We can know the Brahman through the Vedas. Similarly, what do the jivas do? Once they are born and they are in samsara, you are supposed to read the Vedas. And that is how you are supposed to make progress. So this is a cycle. We are born through our father and mother. We grow, we do yajna. For yajna, we need Vedas. Vedas talk about God. God, we understand, is the primary principle of all action, and we do some actions. That is the yajna, and that results in clouds. Clouds, rain, rain makes food, and the cycle goes on. Okay. So here, this Veda comes about here. So Vishnu, the Jivas, reading the Vedas, Gurukula, do your studies, and then know the God and so on. So now, we have discussed so far all these ideas so far. Now the concept of Vedas, Angirasa introduces the concept of Vedas now, which is very, very interesting. And it's, I would say, it's the deepest levels of philosophies of talking about creation of the Vedas. Who created the Vedas? Why Vedas are recited during a yajna? So these are all the questions that we should be asking ourselves. So what I was going to do is, before I go to the next slide, let's just have our own, manana of this and share ideas. Who created the Vedas? And why Vedas are recited during yajna? Why can't we recite something else? Yeah. So who wants to take these questions up?
Shall I try?
Try, go for
From
it.
what you have.
Yeah, go for it.
I think Purusha Sukta or somewhere you have said, even though they are apaurusheya, when the creation happened, it came out of Lord's mouth, Lord's breath. And we recite the Vedas because Vedas say everything about the attributes of God. It praises the Lord. And we are always grateful that Lord has created this universe and this Pindanda for us to elevate ourselves and know about Him.
Thank you, Shilaji. Very, very nice. Shrikantji?
Veda is basically Anadi, just like Jiva. and Prakriti and Narayana. And the Vedas, in my opinion, are recited as a oblation to God, to
Fantastic.
the Narayana.
Thank you very much. So, yeah, beautiful ideas that have been shared by Sheilaji and Srikanji. So, thank you very much. So, let's move on. So, as Sheilaji mentioned, this comes in Purusha Shukta, right? Tasmad yajnat sarvahutaha ruchaha samani jagnire chandamsi jagnire tasmad yajus tasmat ajayata. That is, at the dawn of creation, these Vedas came about, says the Purusha Shukta of Rig Veda. And that is exactly what our Angirasa starts off the 6th verse. Tasmad ruchaha yaju. Hang on, my IT. Yes. Tasmad ruchaha sama yajumshi dikshaha yajnashcha sarve krutavo dakshinashcha samvatsarashcha yajamanashcha lokaha somo yatra pavate yatra suryaha. Again, our Soma and Surya come here. That is in a different context. But here he says, all this creationism, what is the next important thing that we need to contemplate? Guys, say is Angirasa is teaching Shuanaka. Tasmad richaha sama yajumshi. Richaha samani jagnire. Chandamsi jagnire tasmad. Yajus tasmat ajayata. Richaha samani jagnire. Yajus tasmat ajayata. So Purusha Shukta also says the same thing. And Mundaka Upanishad is also saying the same thing. In the previous verse, we have done the similar thing. Agnir murda chakshushi chandra surya yoho dishaha shrotre vag vivrutashta vedaha, which Manjunath ji was mentioning in the background when Sheila ji was contributing. Vag vivrutashta vedaha. From the speech of Brahman, from his speech comes the Vedas. Vak Vivritashta Vedaha. So what does he do at the dawn of creation? Om Atataha. Then that becomes Akara, Ukara, Makara, Bhur, Bhuvaswaraha, Tatsaviturvarenyam, Bargo Deva Sadimihi, Diyo Yona Prachodhyat, Purusha Shukta Varga 1, Purusha Shukta Varga 2, Varga 3. That becomes Padya. The first Varga is Padya or the Rig Veda. Second Varga is the Gadya or the Yajur Veda. The third Padya, the third Varga is the Gana or the Sama Veda. And then that evolves into all sounds of the universe. Okay, so that is one that comes out. But at the same time, this Om stirs vibration in the Mula Prakriti, right? And then they start mixing up and grosser elements come about. So the emergence of the Vedas is a critical part of this creation. That is what Angirasa is talking about, right? That it is critical aspect of the creation. So primarily, I'm going to give you some basic foundational information. Then we'll go to some interesting ideas. We got about 10-15 minutes. Hopefully, I'll be able to touch upon those. So these Vedas that emerge, the Vedic rishis and the Vedas themselves say Ananta vai Veda. Vedas are infinite. Okay? But of course, what happened over thousands of years, we have forgotten all the Vedas. And we don't remember anything. We are not interested in any of these things. Okay. So what happened at the end of Dwapara Yuga? We have again done that, right? At the end of Dwapara Yuga, much of the Vedic verses itself were lost. And then that was the primary role of Lord Narayana taking an incarnation as Vedavyasa. To do what? To Avatirno Mahayogi Satyavatyam Parasharat Utsannan Bhagavan Veda Ujjahara Harihi Swayam Chaturda Vyabhajat Tamshta Chaturvimshatida Punaha Shatada Chaikada Chaiva Tataiva Cha Sahasrada Krishno Dwadashada Chaiva Punastasyarta Vittaye Chakara Brahmatu Sutrani Yesham Sutratvam Anjasa. Skanda Purana that Acharya gives an introduction in his Anuvyakyana and Brahma Sutra Bhashya. Yes, to what Vedavyasa did was, much of the Vedas were lost during the end of Dwapara Yuga, and Vedavyasa incarnation happened to preserve whatever was left. Okay, so he gave it to his various students, right? Paila, Vaishampayana, Jaimini, and Sumantu, Rik, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva, Shake. So when I say Vedas are 4, Vedas are only one. Veda is only one, and it is infinite. But he gave these 4 shakes or branches to 4 Sishyas and asked them, please preserve this. I have preserved whatever I can, and you, through your families and your students, preserve the various shakes. So then you got the Rik Shake, Yajur Shake, Sama Shake, and Atharvana Shake. And each then became Upashakes. Rik had 24, Yajur's 2 aspects, Krishna and Shukla 86 and 15, Sama 1000 Shakes, Atharva 12. Together 1137 Shakes, Upashakes. This number is important. I'll come to that in a minute. But then what's happened now? At this point of time, much of this has been lost. You probably have 3, and 2 of the Shakes left in Bharatvarsha. Everything else is gone. Okay, it's a real sad situation. It's gone. We'll have to wait for the next, some kind of a next Manvantara before all these Vedas come about again. So currently it is all gone. You got about 20,416 verses, Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka, and Upanishads. Look at this Shake 1137, our Acharyas teachers. Even in this number of Shakes that Vedavyasa gave, there is a genius there. 1137. 1 plus 1 plus 3 plus 7 equals 12 equals 1 plus 2 equals 3. 1137 is a prime number that is divisible only 3. Why? Because Vedas are only 3. They are called Trayi. What is that? Padya, Gadya, and Gana. Yeah. Padya is what? Riks, Shastra, Mantras. Gadya is prose, Yajurveda. Gana is Samaveda. Okay. Here is a quick question to kindle our imagination. Why then Atharva Veda? What is Atharva Veda, which is now considered as the 4th branch? So who wants to contribute there? Atharva Veda, what is it? We are doing Mundaka Upanishad, which is part of the Atharva Veda. So what is it? Who gave Atharva Veda initially? So Atharva Veda essentially is a combination of Rik and Yajus. Okay, it is not a separate branch of the Vedas. It is just Rik and Yajus together becomes Atharva Veda, where Chaturmukha Brahma gives that aspect to his son Atharva. And Atharva preserves it, and of course Veda Vyasa gives it to Sumantu. So that is what is Atharva Veda, which basically got Rig and Yajus. Okay, so the Vedas are not 4. Primarily Vedas can be classified into Trayi, Rig, Yajus, Sama. Poetry, prose, and music. Okay, so this is basic foundation that we need to think about. So then, of course, the next question is, why did Vedas come into being during creation? And of course, we had very interesting views from Shilaji and as well as from Shrikantji. Why did Vedas come into being during creation? Why is Vedas recited during Yajna? Okay, so this is very important. And Shilaji said, oh, this is to celebrate Paramatma. Absolutely right. But why do we use Vedas to celebrate Paramatma? Here is a brief recap of what are the means of knowledge. It's called Pramana, Anupramana as it's called. Yeah. What are all the means of knowledge? Okay, so even before that, we need to think about what is knowledge itself. So to be known is called Jnaya. The knower is called Jnatru. And when the Jnatru knows something, then he gets Jnana. Okay. There is always 3 components to, there are 3 things in this equation. And there are 2 things that are absolutely essential. That is a Jnatru, a knower, and something to be known. Only when the Jnatru and the known are there, then the question of knowledge comes about. Okay. There are certain schools of Vedanta which think that you can just have knowledge on its own with no Jnatru and Jnaya. That is their problem. But this cannot happen. You need to have Jnaya. An object of knowledge should be there. And somebody should know. There should be a sentient being that wants to know that object. And when the sentient being uses some components to know that object, then knowledge dawns to that sentient being. Okay, so that is what is knowledge about. So Jnatru and Jnaya. So Jnaya is, so what are all the various ways in which this can happen? If we have our sadhana sharira, we can use our indriyas, right? And we can know about the external world. And that sense, new nerve impulses go to our brain. The mind processes it along with the intellect. And then the jiva then says, I now know, I get knowledge. Knowledge dawns to the jiva that this has happened and that an external object has been perceived and the knowledge is now dawned to the jiva. So that is the pratyaksha jnana. Okay. Then you have inference. When I am going in a car, there is smoke in the mountain. I have seen a smoke in the kitchen when there was fire. Wherever there is fire, there is smoke. Such a smoke is seen in this mountain, meaning that there must be fire in the mountain. So the perception of the smoke leads to the knowledge of the fire. Okay, so that is called anumana or inferential knowledge. Okay, so there are only three means of knowledge, and then the third one is verbal testimony. Okay, so now you can realize both pratyaksha and anumana, particularly the pratyaksha, you cannot know a thing that is non-material using your gross indriyas, period. No arguments there. Yeah, because this Paramatma is what? Non-material. Arupava devahi tat pradhanatva. Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha. Yeah. Ashabdam asparsham arupam avyayam tata arasam nityam agandavachayat. Katha Upanishad. We have done that. So this guy is totally non-material. So you're not able to see him with your material indriyas, your gross bodies. Yes, you have now acquired a gross body. You are now going through your innings, having acquired that gross body with your, from your father and mother, you acquired this. And you got all these gross senses. But you cannot know this Paramatma through your gross senses. Okay. And by seeing material things, here you are seeing material things, you cannot know something that is non-material. Okay. Inference, anumana, is a very dependent proof. It is not an independent proof. It's a dependent proof. So you need to have something that will give you a knowledge of non-material things. And our Rishi says there is a third route for this. There is third means of knowledge called agamas or Vedas. There are third means of knowledge called the Vedas that will give you the knowledge of Paramatma. Okay. And as Sheila ji mentioned, in Yajna, you want to know about the knowledge of Paramatma. And that knowledge of Paramatma can come only through the Vedas. So the Yajnas, Vedas were created at that point. Okay. Na indriyani, na anumanam, vedahi eva yenam vedayanti tasmat ahuhu vedaha. That is the definition of Veda from Pipalada Shruti that Acharya gives beautiful, endless references there. Saying that that body of text that will give you the knowledge of Paramatma is called Veda. Na avedavin manutetam bruhantam sarva anubhom atmanam samparaye. If you don't know the Vedas, there is no scope for you for liberation, says Taittiriya Brahman. So that is why we do the yajnas. Now, I thought I'll come to this problem, but looks like we don't have time. So we have looked at the three modes of means of knowledge, and we looked at the knowability of Brahman through the Vedas. Okay. Now is the question. So now we understand somehow when the universe was created, the Paramatma creates the universe because this guy is so gracious, he is so kind to us. He also gives us the way of knowing him. He says, okay, guys, you're all coming in samsara. What I'll also do is I'll give you some texts and read and understand the text so that you can know me and come to me. Yeah. So that is how, with that intention, he creates the Vedas. He brings forth the Vedas. He does not create the Vedas. He brings forth the Vedas. Okay. That is the purpose of Vedas during creation. And of course, in Sanatana Dharma or in Hindu philosophy or Vedic philosophy, Vedas have been given the supreme most validity for all non-material things. Okay. And Veda Vyasa discusses this in this particular sutra, which is very important. Na vilakshanatvad tatatvam cha shabdat. Shabda means Veda. Na vilakshanatvam is entirely different group. It's an entirely different body of text. Nothing to do with the books that we study or the novels we study. The Vedas are an entirely different group of texts. And the validity, why do our rishis give so much importance to the validity of the Vedas is because of three reasons. And Apaurushaya, I think Srikanji was mentioning that. Apaurushaya, Nityatva, and Swataha Pramanya. Okay. That is called, and the most important thing there is in Tattva Nirnaya, Acharya will talk about this in great detail in Paricheda 1. Yeah. Now he'll start off by saying, Aporushayatvat Vedasya. Yeah. This is an unauthored text, guys, and that is why it is supremely valid. Okay, so I just want to stop there by introducing this idea of Apaurushayatvat Vedasya. How can there be a body of unauthored text? Okay, this sounds pretty crazy. It sounds like a pretty crazy idea. How can you have a body of unauthored text? And that also comes forth during creation. And that comes forth during creation will give us an idea about who the Paramatma is. And that is, we are in the Shishti Prakarana, right, of Angirasa, where he has spoken about how to contemplate creation in a yajna. So all these ideas are coming through here. So what we will do in the next verse, next week is, we'll take this problem. How can there be a body of unauthored text? Okay. And if we get this firmed up in our heads, that Vedas is the supreme most validity. And this is the greatest discovery of our rishis. And it is a fundamental axiomatic truth of Vedic philosophy. Now, once we understand that and put it into our core, then we can make further progress as how Angirasa tells us Vedas come and what do Vedas do? Vedas not only talk about Paramatma, there is Paravidya and Aparavidya Vedas, right? That is what the very first, if you remember, Dve Vidye Veditaive Parachaiva Aparacha. That is how he started. So that whole Vedas about Paravidya and Aparavidya, he brings back it here and tells us, for the Paravidya, that is what is going to give you salvation, and you're going to come out of the Panchagni. That is your source of salvation. You need to know the Vedas, and that Vedas also was brought forth in creation by Paramatma himself. And how does he do that? Of course, we need to understand the basics around this before we make pravesha into the subsequent philosophies of Angirasa. Okay, so I hope that is useful and it gives you an introduction to this. My suggestion is go back and do some reading and we can have a very interactive session as to how can there be a body of unauthored text. This defeats logic. But no, it is extremely logical and scientific. And that is what I would want to impress upon in the next weeks. Okay, so on that note, let's close today's session. Bucket loads of slides as usual. And Krishna Pranamastu. Unless anybody has any pressing questions, we can close today's session. GVG, go for it.
Question. if that's okay.
Okay. No, let Shushritji go ahead. I will ask later.
Yeah, sure. Okay, GVG has raised his hand. GVG, go for it.
Okay. Oh no, I think my question is when we say like 3 Vedas, right? Sometimes it is 3, sometimes it is 4, right? And sometimes it is 3. We are saying Rik, Yajur, Sama, right? But then we are saying Sama is nothing but Rik words, but in the poem. I mean, but in the Udgita, right? But as sung. There's a Padya as an Gana, it becomes Sama. So words wise, they are not new. So basically, then there are only 2 Vedas, right? Or the other one is Atharva Veda, right? So Atharva Veda is sometimes it said, hey, it is a combination of Padya and Gadya. Padya, though it's a combination of Padya and Gadya, doesn't mean that it is the exact verses of Rik plus Yajus. It's only say Padya and Gadya. It could be newer words. If it is new, then why don't we say Rik, Yaju, Atharva, right? Then Sama. I just parked my question there.
Yeah. Thank you very much, GVG. Very interesting question. And also, I just need to introduce here, forget about just only two types of Vedas. Actually, Angirasa actually starts as everything initially was only Yajur Veda. So that I haven't come to that. Everything is Yajur Veda. Everything is about yajana. Everything is about yajna, and then the differentiation. So that is also there. And you're right. So some people say dvayi, some people say trayi. There are some people who call themselves as Chaturvedi because they know all the 4 Vedas. So Atharva Veda. I think my understanding of that is Atharva Veda as a separate Veda actually is not there. It is just a classification. But originally, of course, Hayagriva Namaka Paramatma gave it to Chaturmukha Brahma, and Chaturmukha Brahma gave that portion of the Vedas to Atharva. And the Atharva then propagated it. Of course, to say that, then Veda Vyasa gave it to Sumantu to preserve that is how it comes. So if you think that Hayagriva Namaka Paramatma gave that portion of the Veda to Chaturmukha Brahma, who offers it, who that gives, I mean, of course, Chaturmukha Brahma receives all the Vedas as his capacity. And then that one portion he gives it to Atharva, and Atharva then looks after it. So that is Atharva Veda. So when you look at it from that perspective, Srinivasanji, to me it appears that Atharva Veda technically is part of Rik and Yajus, primarily because if we take Veda as one single component, it's got Padya and Gadya. So Atharva has also got Padya and Gadya. It is not a separate Veda. It's a combination of both, but you're right, it has got different mantras. So whether we can say that Sama should be excluded and only Rig, Yajus and Atharva needs to be considered as three Veda is an interesting question. I will leave it to the Vedic scholars to answer that question, but to me it looks like that Veda was given from Hayagriva to Chaturmukha Brahma and so on. So I haven't answered that question. Unless somebody else wants to come in, or Srinivasanji, you want to share some insights as to how do you kind of settle this?
No, I don't have any further insight other than just a question or a comment. That's it.
Yeah, very good. So we'll come
One thing, Madhuji, just want to add one point to that.
Yeah.
If you, the thing is, if you all the mantras are there on the Rig, the same mantras come into Yajur also. So if we take that kind of classification, everything comes only in the Rig Veda, right? There are all the mantras from the Rig Veda come to the Yajur Veda for doing the Yajna Karyas, etc. Right? So that means all the mantras when it's there in the Rig Veda, only the only Rig mantras are there, right? Because if you take the Samaveda, the same mantra when it comes to Samaveda, the annotations are different. Similarly, the same Rigveda mantra when it comes to Yajurveda, annotations are still different. So that is why probably he did the classification and then he brought like this. But my thing is fundamentally Vedas are only one. If you take like that, that's my point. I just want to don't create much further confusion, but just wanted to share that thought.
Yeah. Thank you, Prakashji. So I'll come to Anand in a minute. So we had, I think, two other folks who wanted to come in. I've forgotten who it was. Yeah.
Suresh.
Suresh, go for it, and then Sushruth. Yeah.
Yeah. No, just on the same this one. End of the day, Vedas are describing the Almighty, and they can't be different. Fundamentally, they're conveying the same message. But there are three modes of communication. There is Padya, Gadya, and Gana. So and those are the three elements in three different ways in which contemplations can be done, and therefore the three Vedas is how I was understanding. Just wanted to share that thought.
Sure, Sureshji. So, and of course, Veda Vyasa Veda Vyasa did this, right? He sort of created the Shake, Rig, Yajus, and Sama, so that it can be preserved. The ones that are all Rigs are all grouped together, the ones that are all in prose grouped together, and the ones that are all in music, the ones that can be communicated in music can be grouped together, and then he gave it to all his people. So that is how I also understand it, Sureshji. Thank you. Sushruth?
On completely different thing, and it's very basic question. Is Parjanya the same as Varuna, or is it a different Abhimani Devata?
Different, Sushruthji, different.
So what level of the Vedic pantheon? Because I've never come across him in the pantheon before.
Good question. I will have to go back to my book and check where he is. But he is very, very low in the Kaksha. Okay, if you look about Agni, then you have Surya and then you have Soma. Surya and Soma are next to each other. Agni is number 15. Parjanya is very lower. I think he's 19 or 20. Anybody else wants to come in here?
Yeah, Shobha says it is 20.
20. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So how come he is supervising someone higher than him?
It's a role that has been given to him, sir. What can we do? God has given it to him. He is very knowledgeable, so he's been given that role. You're right in the sense, maybe Vayu should be sitting there and doing supervisor. But actually, whenever you do yajna, you always do prana and then you do Agni Narayana, right? Prana Agni and then Agni Narayana. So I think the portfolios have been given that way. So I don't know whether we can see some taratamya there. The higher rank person must be the supervisor. Good question, Sushruji, but I don't have an answer for that. Anand Srinivasanji.
Thank you. Two comments, right? First one is just a continuation of what was just mentioned. Even though Parjanya is number 19 or 20 in the Taratamya, it is always taken as Parjanya Antargata Narayana or Parjanya Antargata Vayu Devur Antargata Narayana, who is always the doer, right? So by taking that Taratamya, all anyway goes back to him. So it doesn't matter what the number is because it's all been controlled by Bhagavanta only. So just a quick one. The second one is with respect to the Jivya or the corollary to it. Even though, Rig and Sama are almost same as they say, right? But, syntactically they may be same. Semantically they are same. Sometimes, two same things when it is one in Padya, another in Gana, maybe meaning something else for different purposes, isn't it? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I agree with you, Anandji, because sometimes in Ghana, sometimes we raise the tone, we sometimes bring it down, sometimes we extend the tone. So all those things, our acharyas tell us that, when the sound is extended, the meaning actually changes. The letter may be the same, but the meaning of it extends. For example, the Agni Sukta, right? So Samaveda, for example, is Agna-yi, and then it goes in that rhythm. And our teachers have told us even that going in that rhythm, high and low and so on, that itself has got meaning. So I take that beautiful point, and those tones have deeper meanings.
So because one could be for Hotru and the other one could be for Udgatru, right? It's quite possible.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, excellent. Any other comments? Fantastic. So great discussions and lots of learning points in our discussion section. So look forward to next week. So please do some background reading. We're going to be looking at a whole deeper levels of understanding of communication. Yeah, about communication, concepts of varnas and so on. So we'll look at that next week, because I think although it may be slightly out of context, I think it's important to, revise, given any opportunity to go back and revise these kind of concepts, and then we make our onward journey. Okay, on that note, Harish, if you're there, please can you take us through Omkara Chintana?
Sure.
Excellent. Thank you very much, everyone. Hare Krishna and stay safe. We'll catch up next week.
Krishna,
Hare Ram.